Hello, we are back. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or sorry, or online at widerfm.org. So we're going to be joined by my co-host Lawrence in about 10 minutes or so. But before that, I wanted to kind of start with this next story, which has to do with indigenous tribes here in Michigan who are trying to get more resources to fight the opioid epidemic. And we're I'm going to be kind of just reading along and commenting. Um, and this article comes to us from Bridge, Michigan. Headline is Michigan aims to remedy egregious injustice as tribes shut out of opioid funds. So I'm just going to read a little bit from here and go along. This was written, or I'm sorry, this was published on June 6th, written by Ron French. The south side of the Saginaw Chippewa Behavioral Health Center in Mount Pleasant is a 24-bed residential treatment center, one of only two operated by the dozen federally recognized tribes based in Michigan. They're in the one modern story, or the sorry, they're in the modern one-story brick building. Tribal members who need intensive support for their substance use disorder receive counseling and medication-assisted treatment, while surrounded by traditional Native American culture and care. There are sweat lodges, Anishinaabe language classes, and smudging, a healing and meditation practice involving the burning of sage or tobacco. Providing addiction services in an underserved area among a population with crushing rates of substance abuse, the center seems like a perfect candidate for the opioid settlement funds flooding into the state. But unlike some other states, Michigan hasn't shared any funds from national settlements with its tribes, something one tribal leader calls an egregious injustice. That might change in the next state budget, which is being negotiated now. Budget proposals by the Senate and House both have a $5 million allocation from opioid settlement funds to the tribes to use as they see fit. The 2024-25 budget proposal of Governor Gretchen Whitmer has no carve-out for the tribes. Michigan is expected to get $1.6 billion over 18 years from a national settlement with opioid manufacturers, distributors, and pharmacies for their role in the spread of the opioid epidemic. The state and local units of government had already received $181 million by the end of 2023 to address a crisis that has killed more than 11,000 Michiganders since 2018, an average of one every 4 hours. Counties, cities, and governments have gotten about $58 million so far, with the state government pocketing the other $123 million. State officials can decide how best to use those funds. The majority of those state funds have not yet been spent. In the first two budget years since the state began receiving funds, the state hasn't given any money to the tribes, even though Native Americans have one of the highest rates of addiction and overdose deaths among ethnic groups. I want to also just comment, get a little bit of commentary here. Opioid deaths are often is a combination of kind of deaths from despair and the fact that, as we know, over the course of many years, opioids were dangerously overprescribed. And when you combine that in an area that has been systemically not only disenfranchised but kept uh, often in significantly higher poverty rates than the rest of the country, then that is a recipe for again just exacerbating the opioid epidemic. And it's kind of back asswards here because the problem is tribal governments are their own sovereign entities within the state of Michigan, but by not giving them any of that set aside money to deal with the opioid crisis that again has come from the outside the community. Big pharma does not exist inside Anishinaabe land or inside those tribal areas. Yet at the same time, they have been victim to it in the same way that many other Michiganders and people across the country have over the last 20 years. But because of that sovereignty, Michigan has just apparently, oh, we just forgot. We're not going to share any of this money with them, even though through no fault of their own, the opioid addiction, which has been recognized a national crisis, has hit them just as hard, if not harder. Going on, even if Michigan doles out $5 million to the tribes, it will be significantly less than what other states are doing. Wisconsin plans to give $6 million of the $36 million it will receive in fiscal year 2025 to its tribes for prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery efforts. Minnesota has given $9.4 million to its tribes since 2020. Washington has given $15 million to its 29 sovereign tribes, and Oregon has distributed $44 million to tribes, a whopping 30% of its total funds. Michigan not allocating funds to address tribal addiction problems is an egregious injustice. Dori Rios, tribal chairperson and Nottawasapi Huron Band of the Potawatomi in Kalamazoo County, said in a written statement to Bridge, Michigan. Opioid addiction is a serious and pervasive public health, human rights, and social justice issue affecting our tribal communities. Tribal communities experience the second highest rate of overdose deaths and the highest suicide rate in Michigan. Currently, the tribes can apply for competitive grants, but they are not allocated funds directly to use as they see fit. The Opioid Advisory Commission, established by the legislature to make recommendations to battle the epidemic, recently recommended the state provide funds to the tribes. Senator Jeff Irwin from Ann Arbor said he's hopeful that an allocation of the tribes will survive budget negotiations. The tribes have knowledge and connection with their own communities and to the broader rural communities they often serve. They're in a position to see the need and address that need. Sarah Winchell Gursky, residential treatment manager of behavioral health for the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe, said opioid settlement funds would help the tribe's clinic expand its services to more people, as well as provide the kind of wraparound services that help people stay sober. For example, a transportation service for clients the center now provides is funded by a grant that ends this year. We provide transportation to any appointment that helps people maintain their recovery, such as going to meet your probation officer, attending an AA meeting, going to a job interview. That service would disappear without additional funds, Winchell Gursky said. A 1-month injection of Suboxone, a methadone-like medication used to treat opioid use disorder, costs $1,200, and some clients take the medication for more than a year. Michigan's tribes deserve a share of the state's opioid settlement funds to help their members, said Rios, chairperson of the Nottawasapi Huron Band of the Potawatomi. Tribal citizens are Michigan citizens who are the intended beneficiaries of the assistance this money will provide. So if you want to check that out, that article, that is Michigan aims to remedy egregious injustice as tribes shut out of opioid funds. I can find that at Bridge, Michigan. I just did want to kind of cap that off by saying, I think this also speaks to a longer legacy of kind of one of the more insidious and less remarked upon elements of colonialism, which is the way that, much like, smallpox was brought in blankets, or uh, alcohol was introduced to Native Americans um, in such significant numbers as to proliferate addiction. We're seeing those colonial legacies continue into the modern era in this way that, again, Native tribes are being um, addicted to opioid substances, and they are unable to get the resources that other people in Michigan, other states, municipalities have been able to do. All right. So we're going to take another quick little break. We come back. I'm going to be joined by my co-host Lawrence. We're going to break down some of the other issues of the day. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online. We got a YouTube page, especially if you have hearing issues. I myself wear hearing aids. That can be helpful. You can follow along with the subtitles. And we also have the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find that on most podcasting apps. Keep it down locked. This is Media Cyphers, your only source for political revolution.
This
Hello again, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. I'm joined now by my co-host Lawrence. Lawrence, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, doing great. It's a pretty beautiful day out. I had a fantastic weekend. Went to Pride on Friday night. Had a pretty great time. Also, I went. The Lord of the Rings was in theaters. So I went and saw that with my fiance, and she also made me this fantastic shirt. If you're listening on the radio, you can't see, but it's the Fellowship. It was like, you have my sword, my bow, my axe. And then in the corner is Marsha P. Johnson saying, and my brick, which if you never remember, uh, call back to Stonewall. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So,
I mean, my weekend was pretty good, man. Helping out family. I did go see Bad Boys, the new Bad Boys movie, and I you can make an argument that it's the best one out of the series.
oh,
Like,
really?
you
Okay.
should, like my favorite is always two. Two,
Hmm.
like even though I think three is a better story.
Hmm.
From an action wise, early Michael Bay, when he wasn't completely garbage, really knew how to create really dope set pieces. And because Martin Lawrence, uh, as a character actor, knows how to give comedy in action scenes and tension scenes without breaking the reality of it. And Will Smith is just Will Smith. Like watching them perform together, it's very much like watching Shaq and Kobe. Or if they were superheroes, it would be like watching Green Lantern and Superman. Like they're both really good at what they do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that second one,
It, yeah,
that,
I like it though. It's a
yeah.
fantastic movie.
Well, I think a good segue from that, it's about to get real. Because we're gonna talk about, or I guess real fake too, because so I think we're about to talk about immigration, and I want to do a little bit of myth busting, and there's some really interesting data about immigrants and the economy here in Michigan. But of course, we're bringing this up because of what Joe Biden did last week. If you're not familiar with what happened um, last week, Biden um, issued an executive order. It's one of the most restrictive policies he's done. It's very much out of the Trump playbook. But it was going to temporarily shut down the U.S. Mexico border, deny asylum to most migrants who are not crossing the U.S. via ports of entry, and limit total asylum requests at the southern border to no more than 2,500 per day. Uh, so,
it is the policy that when Trump wanted to do it and the Republicans wanted to do it when he was in office, we thought were fascist and draconian. And because the ineptitude of the Biden administration not putting together, not doing any of the work that advocacy groups have been talking about, having putting forward a actual redefined and reformed immigration policy. They chose to regurgitate and put forward a lot of right wing policy. And it's very similar to when we talked about healthcare and under the Obama administration, right? President Obama didn't was talked about a public option. We initially was talking about having Mitt Romney's plan from Massachusetts with a public option, but then they just scrapped the public option as well. And we just had a right-wing healthcare plan that was a response to universal healthcare. And now we have a right-wing authoritarian immigration plan that's a response to the Republican candidate who's leading saying, I want to run on this, so don't do anything about it. They literally complain about the issue without actually putting a policy to actually fix the issue. That's like you going to go use the bathroom and the toilet's broke, and you're like, hey, yo, the toilet's broke. Uh, The toilet's broke. We need to fix it, but no one's willing to fix it. And then when you're like, and he's like, hey, we could just go, we could get a worse toilet. Let's just get an outhouse. It's like we have an in-house. Why don't we get an outhouse though? An open
It's
outhouse with no
uh,
door.
immigration. I think especially it's kind of reminiscent to me of the way the two parties kind of threw tossed the potato when it came to abortion as an issue, because you'd have
Yeah,
the right use it as a way to inflame their base, scaremongering. Oh, it's scary immigrant stuff. And then on the other side, Democrats using it as a fundraising tool, like we'll protect your abortion rights, which really just means we're not actively going to attack them, but we're not going to do much to protect them either. Um, and it's almost a similar dynamic, except you're seeing a lot of people on the Democratic side who are just fully buying this reactionary narrative about immigration. You have Joe Biden acknowledging this idea that immigrants are inherently dangerous, and you've got a lot of people in the Democratic caucus, like John Fetterman. That's a whole other discussion.
that's a whole
Um,
other conversation.
but you've got a lot of people in the Democratic caucus echoing these Republican talking points about the dangers of immigration. Um, and
Which is garbage, which is
it,
absolutely garbage. The lies of they're hurting our economy or they're taking jobs, forgetting the fact that it's the corporations that's hiring them. You're not regulating the corporations that's hiring them. You want to hate on the person who's literally come to this country for a better way of life. Like, kind of what the Statue of Liberty says about give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to break free. Yeah, they did that, and you're like, oh my God, they're taking real American jobs. If you don't get your Andy, I need you to get your cousins. Okay?
yeah.
Get your cousins.
Let's dive a little bit into kind of the macroeconomic reasons that the ruling class does this, because it's worth repeating, and it's important because it seems like a bit of a contradiction. It's like, why are you trying to keep immigrants coming here if you need their cheap labor? And part of it is that a lot of these same corporations that use cheap immigrant labor also fund anti-immigrant politicians. And part of the reason they do that
Fact.
is it's about keeping the temperature high in their workplaces. We've had stories that we've talked about on the show where, farms, warehouses, etc., that employ a lot of immigrant labor. Those laborers have at times maybe mused about maybe we should organize, maybe we should start a union. If the environment that they are working in is we could get deported or we could get beat up by anti-immigrant racists, it's much easier for that boss to say, oh, you're going to accept my bad working conditions, you're going to accept my bad pay, you're going to accept harassment, because the alternative is to either get deported or worse, because you are living in a country that's actively demonizing you, while actively demonizing you, exploiting your labor, and making pointedly making the conditions in your home country worse, so you have to immigrate in the first place. That always gets
Yeah,
left out
it
of the
is. It
immigration
is.
debate.
Yeah, it is the quadruple whammy, or as Fortune 500 companies, as the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies would say, it is the holy trinity,
Mm-hmm.
unholy trinity.
Yeah. And what I do mean by that, and just because again, if you're a long time listener, it's going to sound like a broken record, but I always like to remind listeners, The United States has a long, long, long history of military intervention in Central and Latin America. We've
in Africa
overthrown
and other countries
governments
too.
that do not economically toe the line. A lot of these dictators that people have fled over the years were installed by the U.S. government. I think about Honduras as being like one of the more recent examples. Um, we also do the same.
Honduras, Venezuela, and Haiti.
Yeah. We also do the same thing economically. Much of what supercharged immigration in the 90s and 2000s were the after effects of NAFTA, which forced many Mexican subsistence farmers out of their lifestyle, out of a job, so they'd have to look northward for employment. Um, Not to mention, again, there's a lot of immigrants coming from Venezuela, a country that we actively have sanctions against right now. So, again, this is stuff that Republicans and Democrats will never bring up during the immigration debates. Right now, all they're debating about is how tall they should build the wall, how long they should close the border. It's pretty sad, especially as just to remind folks, this is another broken record moment. Um, is it's kind of my whole reaction to this is Google on or go on YouTube, look up the clip of Jonathan Frakes telling you're wrong every 5 seconds. It's like a compilation of when he hosted Ripley's Believe It or Not, and he's just like, wrong. That's wrong. That's a made up tale. It's false. It's fake. A writer came up with that, and they did because look at the data, and we will post this information in the show notes. Just I'm not talking out of my butt, but studies have found the again proportionately citizens commit way more crimes than non-citizens. Now,
Natural, yeah, natural, what they call natural born, legally American, naturally born citizens commit more crimes than uh, immigrants to this country. Mostly because if you're born here, you don't have to worry about being deported.
yeah, absolutely. And also worth mentioning too that a lot of the demonization you'll hear, like Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene they'll prop up a family who's they had somebody was killed by an immigrant or something, and the thing is they always whip out these really salacious anecdotes, and the problem with it is again it's meant to tug on your emotional heartstrings, but you got to acknowledge the fact that like there's okay, they might be able to cherry pick some of these stories here and there, but proportionally, there have been way more gnarly stories from people who were born in the United States that have gone on to do really gross and terrible stuff. Way more. Especially accounting for how many more citizens there are to non-citizens. But I digress. Basically this has all been kind of churned up by not. A lot of the Democrats try to be a little bit more mainline. It's like, oh, we don't think because the Republicans are full on like these are the rampaging hordes that are coming up to rape and pillage and all that. Democrats they'll be a little it's like, well, there's a lot of fentanyl coming up from the border, and the answer to that is too. We looked into this on the show just because again, I got really tired of hearing this talking point, and it's true. Most fentanyl comes from Mexico, but who are the primary smugglers of fentanyl? If you said Mexican immigrants, you'd be wrong. Mostly U.S. citizens are the ones smuggling fentanyl up from Mexico into the United States because, again, if you use your brain a little bit, it's easier to smuggle fentanyl up north into the U.S. if you're already a U.S. citizen. They're not going to scrutinize you as closely, etc. Um,
How many movies have we seen of if it's Blow or these tales of drug dealers who look like your average regular Americans, and uh they don't get scrutinized or even looked at uh twice for the most part. Like they do it, they're successful, and they were successful for years because of it. Because it's easier for it's easier to get away with stuff when you look like a regular person.
Yeah, I think like a good comparison from fiction. Like I think Breaking Bad is probably one of the most memorable examples of this because it's especially when he starts out, he's a really terrible criminal. He does not know what he's doing, but he gets away with it so long because again, nobody expects a middle-aged white science teacher to become like a methamphetamine kingpin. And I mean that's the same at the lower level too. If you sound friendly, if you appear white, etc. Oh, hi, how you doing, Mr. Border Patrolman? Um, they're not going to expect that you're actually smuggling fentanyl into the country. Whereas if your skin is a little bit darker and you have an accent, they'll be much more liable to stop you and check out your car. Profiling
and
is a
and
very real thing.
and before people get mad and say, "Oh man, are you saying cops racially profile people?" Yes, we had a study in Kalamazoo where they did a study of stops in and around the area. And you want to know who was more heavily policed and stopped? The north side and south side. The north side and south
Hmm.
side of Kalamazoo have a lot of black, brown, and lower income residents.
I was gonna say, doesn't the Edison have like the largest Hispanic population in the city? I was like, I
I
don't know.
think so.
It's yeah. The answer is actually yes. If
Like,
folks couldn't
like,
detect my sarcasm at home, but
yeah, it's yeah, you have the largest Hispanic population on the south side. You have the largest population of black people on the north side, and you wonder why you want in the over policing and stopping in compared to the other portions of our neighborhood. Not because they were actually doing anything wrong, not because those stops were actually warranted. It's because the police had a quota. And as we've seen and talked about on this show, police officers, when it's the first 15th and last of the month, when they need to get their quotas up, they're going to the lower income neighborhoods.
yep,
But yeah,
absolutely. And I also wanted to like kind of there's this report from We the People Michigan. Well, actually, wait, let me reverse that. I wanted to spend a little bit more time talking about what Biden's policy actually is. So, I'm going to quote a little bit from this is from Democracy Now. They are interviewing excuse me, uh, John Washington. He's a reporter, works with Arizona Luminara, and he's the author of recent books, The Case for Open Borders and The Dispossessed, A Story of Asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border and beyond. Uh, and
we will
I
make
just,
sure that those book notes will also be in the doobly doo below, because
mhm,
we need to make sure that even though Michigan does have a lot of banned books, when we talk about these books, we need to make sure that people know them so you can order them for yourself.
yeah, but I just wanted to kind of point out some of the most egregious things he's pointing out in this order that I think haven't really been talked about very much in the mainstream media. So as he put a fine point on it, because we've been talking a lot about international law lately. It is a violation of international and domestic law. It's really point out that the idea of an illegal asylum seeker is a contradiction. People have the right, according to U.S. law, to seek asylum, irrespective of how they cross the border or where they are or what their status is. Um, also, um, Border Patrol are being required to proactively ask everyone they come into contact with if they have any fear of returning to their home country. That's usually how it goes. There's a series of questions they're obligated to ask. Now, one of the changes is it's going to be up to the person themselves to disclose that. It's called something like the shout test, where they have to themselves make it clear that they're scared to go back to their country of origin or potentially be deported back into Mexico. This is a problem for a number of reasons. The conditions these people are required to make that claim in are very difficult. They have just been arrested. They have probably just gone through weeks, potentially months of a very arduous journey to arrive to this point. And they are dealing with people that we know. And as they've reported on Border Patrol screening before, we know that there's plenty of reports that say that they actually just won't listen to them. It makes it a little bit easier. It eliminates some paperwork for Border Patrol, and people now are going to be forced to make these claims themselves. And then going down also, uh, the exemptions and exceptions are narrowed for who can actually access asylum. Right now, the way that the government is trying to push people to do it, this is wild when you really think about it. Access an appointment via an online or phone app. Uh, no, look, I get it. Everybody has smartphones these days, but not. I would imagine people fleeing from their lives from despotic South American governments, their ability to access a smartphone app or the internet might be a little bit less than you or I. That's just again, it's God.
Here's a great question for those people who's like, hey, they need to be able to access the internet. Here's a great question: where are they going to charge their phone? If they're literally leaving their home to come to America for a better way of life, where do you think they're going to charge their phone?
Last I checked, I haven't been hiking in the desert in a while, but there's not just USB ports hanging out of rocks and stuff. Last I checked,
Like,
maybe in the
like,
cactus you can hook it up.
yeah, you expect that's even if they know English. So if they let's say they're coming from the southern border, so that means they just know Spanish. That means they're coming to a border town that crosses into America. Hopefully they have signs to a library or to a hospital or somewhere like that. But that's also assuming that they also have money.
Mhm.
A lot of those folks probably do not. So like,
So
come on, dog. Y'all are
yeah.
tripping.
So this last point from this Democracy article I want to hit on, and this just I really want to emphasize this one because let's go travel back in time about 4 years. It's 2020, the year of chaos, whatever. But one of the things that Biden and his campaign harped on again and again, rightfully so, was the egregious way the Trump administration was separating kids from their families at the border. Everybody acknowledged this is horrendous. This was barbaric. It has to stop. It was one of the main reasons people were, charged up to vote for Biden. Like, we can't stand that the government is doing this in our name anymore. So here's the last part of this commentary on what this rule actually means. This rule does not apply to unaccompanied minors, which potentially will lead to sort of something like coerced family separations where parents, and I've seen this firsthand, who are bottled up in northern Mexico and are waiting to try to do it, quote unquote, the right way, realize that there actually isn't an option or that they'll have to wait months or more. And so they will send their kids across alone. And then they themselves will try to make a claim later on. So now, granted, they're not being forcibly separated by border patrol agents at the border, but I need people to understand the implications of this. It's that kind of fascism versus diet fascism thing that we talk about here, where it's like these people are being presented with such an egregious choice that they're basically being forced to. The implication is they're being forced to separate themselves, and it's probably just reading the first time I read that I just like I kind of paused for a second. I'm just like I'm used to we're all used to politicians breaking their campaign promises and stuff like that, but like just the way that it has gone so full circle from where we started to where we are now, where we're basically at a point where a candidate who ran against very full-throatedly against family separation at the border is forcing it to de facto occur under his administration anyway, due to his executive order. And again, it also speaks to like that big difference between Republicans and Democrats. So it's like, the Republicans will do racist, draconian stuff openly, whereas like here, the devil is kind of in the details.
Yeah.
So
It, it,
yeah,
it, it takes a Democrat to do the worst or a segment of what the Republicans could not get away with. And that's the sad reality of our state of affairs.
yeah. While we are on this topic, I did want to close with some Michigan related. So here's some actual truth, some truth bombs, as it were. This was shared to me from some folks at We the People Michigan. Kudos to them. But they compiled some data from a report by the American Immigration Council and the Michigan Global Talent Initiative. And it basically what it shows is like all these narratives about like immigrants being like dangerous or a drain on the economy, et cetera, are absolutely 100% false. And if you look at the data just here in the state of Michigan, you can see that. They boost the state's economy. They don't receive many benefits in return, which is a bad thing. And they serve as the backbone of a lot of state industries. So, just a couple of numbers to point out. They spend about um, currently around 7% of Michigan's population are immigrants. Um, this is as of 2022. That's about 6.80 thousand immigrants. And um, immigrant households earned $31.3 billion. 5.5 went to federal taxes. $2.6 billion went to state and local taxes, and 23.1 billion basically went into local communities and the broader economy as just general spending power. But in total terms, immigrants in Michigan contributed about $67.8 billion to the state's GDP over the course of that year. Uh, or to put it another way, 8.6 of all spending power in the state was attributable to immigrants in 2022. Keep in mind, they only make up 6.9% of the population. So they literally outspend themselves by a margin of almost 2 percentage points. I know it's getting kind of wonky and it's kind of I don't necessarily like framing it in economic terms like this because it's like a person's worth is not based on how productive they are. But if you were that sort of person who does think that way, if you're like one of those more like capitalist liberals or like libertarian right wingers, um, even under your own metrics of success and worth, the immigrant population of Michigan is succeeding a plus, 4 stars. I don't know how else you want to what other metric you really want to use. Um, here's
Can we
another.
also can we also just say the majority of immigrants don't come from the southern border? The overwhelming majority of immigrants to this country, they fly here and then they overstay their visas, i.e., all I was it 2 out of 3 of the former the president's wives, they all I know his last one and her parents did didn't they're here, but they're here because they um they overstayed their visas. So as much as we want to demagogue about the border and things of that nature, uh, the thing that I want people to remember is what is the right solution. The right solution is the thing that we talk about all the time. Some viewers may not have heard it, so I'm gonna say it here. If we were to flood those border towns with judges and agents that can process asylum claims faster and had a much more robust system of actually becoming an American citizen that didn't take 3 years to do so, then we wouldn't have such a dire situation. Uh, uh, that quote unquote that we have on our and also if we were to stop the international shenanigans that we have done in the Congo and Sudan and in other countries that our hands have been part of that have created humanitarian crises, and been a part of those type of things, then those countries wouldn't have citizens trying to leave there to come here.
Absolutely, 100%. And again, we'll link to all of that data in the show notes. So you can show that to your racist uncle next time you guys get together for dinner.
Oh Jesus!
Make him
Oh
upset.
no!
That's
Oh
fake
God!
news.
Oh
Uh,
God!
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, we'll link to all of the data, again, the Democracy Now! Article, as well as some of the data we referenced there. Thanks again to We the People Michigan for posting that on our page. Really nifty and really underscores again the total distance between the rhetoric coming out of both the Republican Democratic Party and the reality. Again, these people are, immigrants as a whole, less criminal and much more economically productive than people who are U.S. citizens. So yeah, by whatever metric you use, um, I would rather live next door or be again. I'd rather have all of my neighbors be immigrants than racists. So maybe we
Yeah,
could
I
deport
would I
them. I
would
don't know.
rather take absolutely. I would rather take a immigrant than a racist any day of the week.
Mhm. I wanted to before we go on to the next topic, I just wanted to shout out something real quick because I forgot to mention it earlier in the show, and this is very important. The WMU, the association, the the board appointed faculty, the local union. I'm sorry. So the local union, board appointed faculty of Western Michigan University, representing over 700 teachers, scholars, researchers, etc. They're going to be having a negotiation kickoff rally Thursday, June 13th at 11:30 a.m. That's going to be in front of the Montague House on 814 Oakland Drive. And they say they're calling all members and allies stop by on Thursday to help send the message that Western Michigan University must start investing in its core Michigan employee working conditions, our student working conditions. As we reported in the past, this university has not been the best in making sure that all of its faculty and staff make a living wage. So if you want to support some of the workers and teachers and instructors here at Western. That is a good, solid in-person way you can do that. That's Thursday, June 13th at 11:30 a.m. Again, in front of the Montague House. That's 814 Oakland Drive. So Lawrence, kind of wanted to kick to the next topic. Did you have something in mind that you wanted to hit on?
Um, I have a few things that I want to hit on. Actually, um, uh, so I don't know if you talked about it earlier, but we have to talk about Israel and the latest garbage that has happened. The latest things that's happening out of Israel, and what I care more about is the media's portrayal and perception of it. Um, for those who do not know, uh, the United Nations building got hit by Israel. Um, I'm trying to pull it up now. A UN school where a UN school was hit by Israel uh in in response to this is before the successful quote unquote rescue of hostages. Um, dozens of people were killed overnight as Israel airstriked a UN school in Gaza. Uh,
I think the latest latest number I saw was about 210 people were killed, and more than 400 injured, um, uh, in uh,
um,
in in that operation to rescue hostages.
oh, that was the rescue hostages. 40 people died. 40 people died in the United Nations school that was sheltering. It sheltered the UN school was sheltering 6,000 displaced Palestinians in central Gaza. In central Gaza. Local health officials say that 40 people were killed, and this total includes 23 women and children. This is coming from uh, what website is this? The ABC News. That was the school attack. This is them attacking a school. This was the day before they had a successful quote unquote hostage rescue. Now, when I first read this article, and I'm pointing out uh uh this particular article right now, the New York Times. When I first read this article, I was like, yo, I was like, okay, Israel saved four hostages. That was really good, right? That's really good initially. It wasn't until I got further into the piece, around 4, 5, maybe 6 paragraphs in, that they said over 200 people were killed in the process. 274 as the last count that I saw. That's 68 people for one hostage. And what they've reported is that the hostages were successfully rescued. Pause right there. If the hostages are successfully rescued, then why do you still need to kill innocent people?
It's worth
Mayor,
noting too. I think some people forget before October 7th. The IDF always kind of bragged openly about having some of like the most well-trained special forces in the world. We could do these precision strikes. We can extract people effortlessly. Apparently, they can't get four people out of uh, again they can't extract four hostages without murdering and injuring close to 800 innocent civilians. Um, there was a
also,
claim
oh, sorry.
from Hamas that they actually killed one of their hostages in the process. Which again, take that with a grain of salt. But we do know that earlier in this conflict, Israel did accidentally kill some of its own hostages.
And
And
also, one of the hostages that they may have killed may have been an American citizen.
Yeah. This also is taking place in the context of being right by the Al-Aqsa Hospital, which I'm quoting from a Common Dreams article, but Samuel Johan from Doctors Without Borders said there have been back-to-back mass casualties as densely populated areas are bombed. It's way beyond what anyone could deal with in a functional hospital, let alone with the scarce resources we have here. How many more men, women, and children have to be killed before world leaders decide to put an end to this massacre? Um,
Yeah. So, so there's two things here because I brought up two different stories. The first story, there is no logical reason for the military to airstrike a United Nations school. This is the same Israel that at the United Nations tore up the charter of the United Nations when other countries said we want to recognize Palestinians and give them sovereignty because this is crazy. So they bombed a United Nations school that had over 6,000 displaced Palestinians. That's the first war crime. The second war crime is this botched attempt at saving hostages because uh So the first war crimes are egregious. You're telling me that, like you said, the most competent, the most moral, the most ethical army and military in the world, what with getting help by the United States, quote unquote, had an operation to save four hostages, and you just happen to kill over 270 people? Make that make sense for me. Because there's no, if the roles were reversed and Hamas killed 270 Israeli civilians to retrieve four hostages, would we say that was successful? Would the
Uh,
news media frame it? Would the news media frame it as a successful rescue mission? And that's the point that I want to get at. The New York Times, I also see it in CNN and like some of the major outlets. The way that they are framing this massacre, and that's what it was. Like the fact that they're saying some of the people that they've killed were actually Hamas fighting back, Hamas militants fighting back. Okay, you know what? If Israel is saying that, I want to take that with a grain of salt. Let's say for the sake of this argument that that's true. Some of the people that they were fighting when they were rescuing these hostages were Hamas fighters. Can they tell you how many were the Hamas fighters and were the civilians?
they could
Because
probably
you can,
guesstimate because
because
you remember that report. I can't remember if we talked about it on the show, but the IDF literally has an AI that they've programmed to basically there's an acceptable number of civilian casualties baked in, depending on how high priority the target is. I'll link to that article too.
no, it's
But
called the program they're talking about is Where's Daddy,
yeah,
where
yeah,
they have an AI system track suspected terrorists and that they will then airstrike the terrorists when they're at home with their families.
yeah. And it's
Like
pretty gross when they break down so the person who leaked this was just somebody in the IDF who thought, man, this is morally horrible. But like, yeah, if you're a level IDF guy, or no, sorry, low level Hamas militant or whatever, oh, maybe it's just acceptable to kill your family. If you're like a general or something, oh, it's okay. You can kill up to 200 or 300 people near them. It's a staggering and astonishing, especially from again, all of the IDF talking points coming out. It's like, oh, we're not killing civilians, or we're not killing civilians on purpose, or they've been inflating the numbers. When again, it's the policy of the Israeli government and the algorithmic defense systems that it use that say it's acceptable to kill innocent people, and the proportion of innocent people who can kill depends on the value of the target. So just so
so
you know,
so
this
it
is kind of the ethos that the IDF is running on.
so the reason why I want to bring up the point about can you can they tell us the number of civilians to Hamas fighters that they've killed? The reason why I bring that up is because Pierce Morgan did an interview with an IDF spokesperson, and the IDF spokesperson had could always bring up the numbers of Hamas fighters that they've killed. But when Pierce asked him, "Hey, can you tell us how many civilians you've killed?" And in this, they never have a number. It is one of the wildest interviews I've seen because Pierce sucks on this topic. He is a pro-Israel talking point machine. Yet and still, when the IDF uh spokesperson or whoever the person was couldn't give an answer, he actually pushed back and said, "Yo, it's really crazy how you can tell me how many fighters you've killed, but you can't tell me how many civilians you've also killed because that's not disproportionate. That's not even nowhere close to being normal." A former UN official, and I have to bring this up in it especially in these particular cases of both these stories. There's a former United Nations officer. I forgot the talking show that I forgot the show that he was talking on, but he said the amount of civilians that Israel has killed, the kill rate is as high and has succeeded the genocide in Rwanda. They have already dropped more bombs on Gaza than the bombs dropped in World War II. So I need y'all to understand that Israel has gone up and beyond what would be classified as normal in this situation. This is
Absolutely.
unacceptable.
And something I kind of really, I want to point out about this story in particular is, this comes on the heels. Just I think last week or the week before, we were talking about Biden putting forth a tangible and realistic sounding ceasefire deals. And I think even a lot of us on the left had a little gleam of hope, like maybe something might happen. Maybe, because maybe this could prevent people from getting killed. And as we also talked about on our last show, of course, if you're Netanyahu, he's been having a lot of push in the other direction about we need to, basically stay in Gaza, total victory, whatever that means, which ethnic cleansing,
Two
that's what that means.
after
Um,
after this, I'm sorry to interrupt, but after this happened, two of his cabinet ministers resigned.
mhm.
After
And
this.
here's how I read it, just from like a real politic perspective. I think he's trying to see if he can have his cake and eat it too, because he's got under tremendous pressure from a lot of the Israeli population, especially the center and like center left, to bring the hostages home, negotiate, bring them home. Everybody on the right wants to stay in Gaza until it's basically leveled and they can start turning it into luxury condos for colonizers. So I almost feel like this move from Netanyahu was almost him trying to see. It's like, okay, well, maybe can I bring the hostages home militarily? Can I satiate both the kind of the rabid genocidal people on my base, as well as the people who actually care about the lives of the hostages? And you know, to put a fine point on it, and I'm going to read this a little bit from this article because I think the Council on American Islamic Relations National Executive Director Nahid Awad said it best. We strongly condemn the Israeli government's horrific massacre at the Nizareth refugee camp, where Israeli forces, some hidden in a humanitarian aid truck, reportedly slaughtered at least 200 Palestinian civilians while freeing four Israeli hostages who could have and should have been safely released months ago as part of a ceasefire agreement that Benjamin Netanyahu keeps torpedoing so that he can continue the genocide and stay in office. Um, yeah, I think that sums it up beautifully. And um, yeah, the situation that we're in it is really ludicrous for them to go and do an operation like this because Hamas is ready to come to the table. A lot of a majority of the Israeli civilian population is ready to come to the table. It's hardliners in Netanyahu's government and people that support them that is repeating and doing this what I could best be like a homicidal stunt is what just happened. You massacred people, saved four people, maybe killed one of your own hostages. We'll see how that pans out. Just to say, oh yeah, we can do this without doing any negotiating. And it's despicable to think. I don't know if they accidentally killed a hostage this time or not. If they did, that might have much graver implications for Netanyahu politically. But I just want to think about that. Just That's just really disgusting to think about. Is the worst thing that could have happened for Netanyahu politically is for one of the hostages to have gotten killed in that strike and not I tried to save four hostages and killed 200 people in the process. I think it really does speak to the way that not only does the population over there, but a lot of the U.S. media just does not value Palestinian lives. As you said, kind of at the top of the subject, you had these mainstream outlets talking about, the IDF successfully rescues 4 hostages while burying the lead that they killed and injured almost 800 people in order to do it. And it was completely unnecessary when all you had to do was make a phone call and say, yes, we agree to the ceasefire plan. The hostages could have been coming home tomorrow, all of them.
Like,
Yeah.
there's no, I couldn't say it better myself. There's no way to justify any of this when they could have come home already. They could they could have been home safe and sound, but instead more people are dead because you chose not to take a deal that Hamas agreed to. Wasn't the main thing that Israel always said was that we don't have a negotiator for peace? We don't have someone that's that on the other side that wants peace. When Biden came out with when Biden came out with this thing, we talked about it. Hamas agreed to it. The only people who's holding up progress here is Israel. And and it is 100 justifiable to say that the blood of all those innocent people, including the dead hostages that have come before, that have died because of the indiscriminately killing that the Israeli government is doing, that the state has okayed, it's on Bibi's head. It's on that administration's head. This is the reason why when we joked about it that he's going to be coming here to America, the IDF needs to arrest him when he gets here. I mean, not the idea. Yeah, the international criminal courts. They need to arrest him when he gets here, because what his administration has okayed and what his people have been doing, his government has done, are war crimes, are genocidal war crimes. There's no other way to explain
I don't know exactly what the international laws are around about you doing a citizen carrying out a citizen's arrest, but I mean, I don't know, maybe you get a few thousand people in DC. But
I think I want to see DC flooded with protesters. I don't
mhm,
want I as much as they've been protesting about Genocide Joe and all the smoke that they've been getting Biden, absolutely warranted smoke.
mhm,
Absolutely warranted smoke. I need to see all that smoke for BB. I need everybody to keep that same energy when BB get here. It needs to be more. It needs to be worse.
mhm. Absolutely. And I mean, just the idea that he was invited here to begin with. I mean, I think like, I don't know if we talked about this yet, but like, I think it just does kind of show like how that's our political system. It really just speaks out of both sides of its mouth because, people, the Democratic side especially will say on one hand, oh, the level of civilian casualties going on in Gaza is unacceptable. And on the other side of the mouth, like, oh yeah, hey, come over, BB. We'll have lunch, or brunch or
Yeah,
whatever. Like
yeah.
it's
BB, come over and explain to us why we should support you killing innocent civilians. Because Hamas. It's always because Hamas. That's why. Like,
yeah,
nah, bro.
if it had any cojones, I'd say like instead of letting him do a speech to Congress, like surprise him, put him in one of those congressional hearings and do it that. I mean,
Put him
dude would
put
bolt
him
like
in
immediately, but
put him in a congressional hearing and then
yeah,
let the audience ask questions.
yeah,
Let it be an ask me anything.
yeah.
Oh no. That'd be crazy.
It's like, yeah,
Ain't
I
nobody
just love to see like, Rashida or somebody just being like, so I want here, I broke down how you've been using our tax money, blah, blah. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I've broke down how you've been using our tax dollars to keep yourself out of jail and to destroy um our to help yourself stay out of jail, but also to hurt us in the process.
Mm-hmm.
You are a terrorist and you should be in The Hague. And I concede
a
my
hundred
time. That's
percent.
how that's
Yeah.
All right,
All
so
right.
that's one story.
Well, I guess Lawrence, do you have anything else to say on that before we move on to
No,
something else?
oh no, I have nothing to say on that. I have something to say on the next topic, but I need a quick water break.
Okay, same here. I think well, let's we're both gonna take a quick little break. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online. We've got a YouTube channel. That's especially handy if you're hearing impaired. You can turn on the captions, and they also uh, give you a little transcript of what we'll be talking about. Or you can find our podcast on most podcasting apps. We take our show. Can't listen to the whole thing on the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. You can just listen to us at your leisure, or while you're on company time, which is the preferred way to listen to Media Ciphers.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
on company time.
yeah. So we'll be right back. This is Media Savers on 89.1 WIDR, your source for political revolution. Back. This is Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. So, Lawrence, the next thing you want to talk about, we've got. I think we just kind of you were let in. We're talking a little bit about it's campaign season, and often we see, it's kind of like conservatives pushing somebody out, kind of trying to represent a minority. I don't know. You try to describe it a little bit better than me,
So
so wanna.
so there's two things. I know that there's some more local and Michigan stuff that we definitely need to get to. But you know, recently Trump's VPs has been a thing that was in the news cycle. Uh uh and one of the people it the short list of people that's that's on his short list is a brother. I think he's on the short list. Brian McDonald, Brian Donald or whatever his name is. A black brother from Florida. Um, Brian Donald. He was in a kerfuffle, a brouhaha, and he said something stupid because he's a black Republican. Most black Republicans, I'm sorry to say it, I love y'all. I love y'all. I truly do. But a lot of y'all logic is stupid. One of the things that he said that was very stupid, that's on tape, is him talking about the black family and the black family staying together longer. And he was framing it by saying under Jim Crow, the black family was better than it is today, even though black families today, from Pew Research and others, are on the rise and are staying together longer in modern context. And he was trying to opine or frame it as in it was better for black families under Jim Crow. I know what you're thinking. I've heard this talking point before. Yes, you have from Candace Owens and Thomas Swalwell and other black conservatives like Jesse Lee Peterson, other black nutcases that have said this same topic or the same thing trying to connect to black folks. Now, if you listen to his entire segment, which you can, and you can listen to him try to defend himself in front of Joyanne Reed. Shout out to Joyanne Reed. Sometimes I don't agree with her all the time, but when she does want to do some really good journalism, she does. And she held his feet to the fire when she literally played back his audio of him opining or uh framing or glowing up Jim Crow as a better time for black couples in black relationships. And the only reason why I bring this up is because we saw Trump's rally in Brooklyn. I don't think we talked about it, but we see Trump going to Nevada, going to Brooklyn, to these places where there's a lot of minority uh uh interest, right? And trying to get back into his populist bag that won him the election last time, talking to the average voter, right? And their needs. And then you have people who's on his short list, like this and others, that then show you who the Republican Party are. A bunch of right wing nutcases. And I encourage you to go and listen and go and watch that interview with Joanne Reed. Other people have talked about this. Shout out to Dr. Rashad Ritchie and others. But if you are a black person that ever says that Jim Crow was better for black families, forgetting the fact that during Jim Crow, black people could not vote. During Jim Crow, women could not ask for a divorce unless a man was with them and okayed it. So women didn't even have full autonomy or rights. During Jim Crow, that brother right there probably wouldn't even be allowed in the restaurant or where he is to have the conversation because of who he is. And also during Jim Crow, yes, more black people voted for Republicans because the Republicans were the progressives. Forgetting the fact that, and he brings up LBJ and Lyndon B. Johnson, that after the Civil Rights Act, the Dixiecrat Democrats vote the South Republicans that would normally vote for the more progressive party, those Democrats started to vote for the Republicans, so the Republicans were anti-civil rights. After the whole switch happened, where the Republican Party that he is a part of did the Southern strategy that the former head of the modern day Republican Party, uh Michael Steele, had to apologize for running a strategy that was overtly based in racism. Yet that era was supposedly better for black families and black marriages. It is the revisionist history that the Republican Party likes to do. The "Make America Great Again" slogan, right? And when they're talking about making America great again, that's what they're talking before the Civil Rights, before the women had a right to vote, you know.
It's I think it's just that it's kind of like another really gross and just again even more ridiculous example of the way Republicans they have this nostalgia for like the 1950s and 40s. Um and they gesture towards some of the most toxic elements of that culture as being responsible for the things that may have been qualitatively better at the time. So like is it true that some people's quality of life was better in the 50s. Yes, and that was largely because of unionization that most Black Americans were locked out of. And again, like looking at like family data and all that stuff. It's like a lot of people don't stay together necessarily these days because they're not right for each other, and the couples that do stay together are are typically stronger because those people, they're people who actually like each other and don't have to be forcibly be together because of financial or economic necessity, although that
Yeah,
does still happen.
50, yeah,
But
yeah. So a study showed that 50% of marriages break up because of either infidelity or because of financial insecurity. Either they had debt or somebody cheated. Now, yes, can you move past those things? Yes. But sometimes you can't move past those things. Some, but, but to frame it during a time where black people were still being lynched, black families are still were still black families were still being openly terrorized. Like that's a period that you want to be. Now here's the thing: some of the things that he talked about, talking about black families sticking together, raising children, uh, coming to developing your ideology and values, uh, and being a functional unit. All those things I agree with. The modern Republican Party does not agree with any of those things. They don't care about. They're not for um, raising the minimum wage to a living wage and tying it to inflation. So more black families will not struggle with financial insecurity. They don't care about paid time leave. So if that black family was to have children, that those children will be taken care of. They don't. They want to defund uh uh welfare programs that would help struggling black families. And also, the majority of people who make less than $15 an hour in this country are black women. So how in the bumbleclad I want to cuss so bad and I can't. How in the world can you say that you support black families or that black families are better or that you want to make that a central part of your platform when the modern day Republican Party goes against all of the things that would help the black family?
Yeah, it's
But
it's it's like it's a little it's like a little shell game that the Republicans play because they opine to like traditional values, family values, sense of community, which are all good things, and I think a lot of their base is genuinely nostalgic for it. You know, they do have a point. A lot of people
I
are a
agree
lot
with
more
it. I agree with
people.
that.
Yeah, people are more isolated these days. There's not as much community cohesion, but again they're a lot of them blame political correctness or the culture wars or gay folks, etc., when the real culprit is, of course, Marx talked about this a lot, the alienation of one under capitalism. And particularly, since the big thing that's changed since the 50s and 60s and 40s that all of these conservatives look back on with such rose-tinted goggles is that the social safety net has been eviscerated. All the gains that were made under FDR have been chopped away. And of course, it's even more ridiculous to say this as like a black politician because a lot of black folks back in those days didn't even get access to those. Uh, but
The black
uh,
people were when the GI Bill, and again, because Jim Crow was after the 7 years. It was 7 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, all the way up to the 19 mid 1960s, right? So all of that time, we're talking about the GI Bill. Um we're talking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of these things that help grow the middle class in America. But we're also talking about redlining. We're also talking about, especially in Michigan, um, uh, 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 them having creeds that black people can't buy certain cars, they can't buy certain land, they can't bank in certain areas. A lot of the stuff that he's talking about the black family thriving and staying together was in spite of the fundamental system that was doing everything to devalue them and keep them in a lower caste system. And the black family and black people thrived out of that. And then he talks about LBJ and he doesn't even bring up the civil rights movement. That's the other thing that completely blew my mind. The same era that brought black people to expanding the circle of liberty for us to be considered, to be looked at and be treated the same way under the law. He saw it as a problem for the black family. Now, were there some things when it comes to like the green books and things of that nature because black businesses had to integrate, and some of that integration did take away from black families and black businesses, and did that hurt our community? Yes and no. We can get into that because that's a much more nuanced conversation. But that man and everything that he was talking about was complete garbage. I just wanted to highlight that so that when you hear, especially now that, oh man, more minorities are starting to go more towards Trump, they're not. There are some,
I think
but
it's
they're not.
important. One, just to put a fine point on some stuff you said. Yeah, again, talking about like it was the resiliency that you're thinking of when you wax
Yeah.
nostalgic to those times. But sometimes I was kind of thinking about. is this is something that we're gonna have to look out for. We don't know who Trump is gonna pick as his VP, but um if you are a savvy campaigner, and let's make no mistake, a lot of Republicans are dumb as dirt, but their strategists are very smart people. Very smart people. Very smart strategists. But they're legitimately good tacticians when it comes to these sorts of politics. And what they're trying to do, I would guess, is they're kind of hit a ceiling with their rabid cult base, so they're going to try over the course of the next couple months to peel off some of the minority support that got Biden in office in 2020. And they're going to do it by playing little uh, you know uh, tricks with not only like history, but with nostalgia that have worked so well on white conservatives. And I think it is really important to, especially if you think your community is going to get targeted with that kind of propaganda, we got to inoculate folks kind of out the gate, because again, hey, we complain about Biden every week on this show, but Trump would be worse for non-white people and most white people by every measurable metric. So
Yeah.
that's something that we should
Like
all
I
remember as we go into campaign season.
look, I'm not openly um I'm like Charlemagne got on that particular topic. I'm not openly endorsing Biden, but there's no way in the blue flames of Hades am I voting for Trump. There's no way in hell I am voting for Trump. If it was either vote for Trump or die, I'm going to the upper room. Like I'm going to go see my Lord and Savior. Uh, but but the problem is for most Americans, it's either Trump, Biden, or the couch. And as in this election cycle, the couch is winning.
Couch
The
is winning
couch
by a
is winning.
landslide. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just, yeah.
But I want to transition from that particular garbage black politician to a black politician that we both support. I have to talk about Jamal Bowman. Jamal Bowman is a part of the Justice Democrats. He's one of the few progressive, outspoken progressives in our body politics that's in the House of Representatives. He is not as far left, or he's not as progressive as a lot of us would want him to be, but he is a progressive, right?
Yes.
AIPAC is trying to AIPAC is trying to take him out.
Oh yeah, I was reading a story about this. Yeah,
Yeah,
in the time we got left, Lawrence, if you want to lay down what this is about.
yeah. So AIPAC and other groups, other affiliated groups are targeting Bowman. They've already spent $4 million in campaign ads in his district to get him, to get him out of his seat. Even other people like Mondaire Jones, other black politicians like Mondaire Jones, has stabbed Jamal Bowman in the back for his Zionist uh, uh, challenger. But they're saying they're going to spend up to 25 million to get him out of the seat. This is one of the most important elections that is coming up in our body politics in this election cycle. If AIPAC and other affiliated groups can buy Jamal Bowman out of his seat, that means they can get anybody up out of here. Because as we all know, money corrupts politics and money runs our system. It's just an auction. And usually who spends the most money win. Usually who spends the most money win. But but Jamal Bowman has been outspoken about Israel and what Israel's doing is genocide, that Palestinians are living in an apartheid state. And because of his outspokenness on the subject, AIPAC and other affiliated groups are trying to get him out of here. And Mondaire Jones is such a disgusting politician because he acted like he was a progressive. He was a poser, a lot like Kanye West. He posed like how Kanye posed and acted like he was a backpack rapper with Talib and everybody, but he really wasn't. Uh, he was just a contrarian. He's just a contrarian, just like Mondale Jones. He acts like he was a progressive, but he wasn't. He was a lot like John Fetterman, but he endorsed his challenger because Mondale also tried to get Jamal's seat and
Yeah, I
lost
remember that.
and
Yep.
lost. So because the Democratic establishment in New York took Mondale Jones's seat from him, and they kicked him out, and he was trying to see if he could go into another district and take Jamal Bowman's seat. Uh, he didn't at that time. He went and tried to get a different seat and lost, and he lost this last bid for Congress too. So, but instead of backing the progressive in the race, he's backing the more conservative candidate. That's backed by AIPAC money. We've seen AIPAC do this to other candidates. If you also remember, Nina Turner, when she ran, she was winning in her field in Ohio. But Chantel Brown was backed by AIPAC. They spent over $5 million in the race within the last 3 to 4 was within the last month of that race, and Nina Turner lost. Not because Nina Turner is not progressive, it's because AIPAC flooded their market with money, and they're trying to do it here. They're trying to scare people off of supporting the right side of history by saying if you supporting those politicians by telling those politicians, hey, this is the Pablo Escobar treatment. We're going to spend $5 to $25 million. Now we can give that to you, or we can give it to your opponent, and that's
Hmm.
basically what they're doing now. It's disgusting. Jamal Bowman, if people can donate to his website, we'll try to get his website in the doobly doo below. He needs our support. The progressives, the squad, they need our support because they're the only ones in our body politics who are actually honest. We don't have to agree with them on everything, but we need to have people who's actually honest and who actually fight on our side.
Yep, and we'll make sure to do that. Also, there's a really good article about it from I can't remember if it was Truth Out or maybe it was Democracy Now, but we'll link to that in the
No,
show notes as
Democracy
well.
Now had a fantastic interview with him talking
Hmm.
about it.
That's right.
Um,
That's what I was thinking of.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they had a fantastic interview talking about it. It is the story in particular that I was reading, um, that I read talking about it. I think was wait, let me see if I can find it. See, I can find it. The New York Times. The New York Times talked about it. Representative Jamal Bull loses support from ex-colleague, um, because his ex-colleague wasn't a real colleague. That's what they should have said, but they didn't. Again, because the New York Times can at times be trash. But yeah, it's go support Jamal Bowman. Go look up that article in the New York Times, and yeah, please support. We need to support our people. We need to support our people. There's a story I think we because we're going to be recording later this week. Landlords inflating prices to screw over tenants. That's a whole story. There's a couple different stories that we need to talk about. But yeah, support Jamal Bowman if you can.
All right. So with that, I think we're gonna wrap things up. I want to thank y'all for listening. This has been Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm .org. You can also find us online, YouTube. We've got a podcast, Media Ciphers Kalamazoo. You can find that in most podcasting apps. Until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.